One choice.
One choice.
One choice.
One choice.
Yours.
Good morning, Monte Vista. How are we doing? Good? Those of you in the gym, assuming that you're really there, you think you are, right? Well, my name is Nick, and I am a chaplain with the Contra Costa County Sheriff, the Danville Police Department, the San Ramon Police Department, and the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District. I'm also a parent of 3 teenagers, 3 of whom have grown up in the district and are attending schools in the district as well. And as a parent, I only have a sampling of what it might be like to be a teenager today. The pressures that you feel. The pressures that are coming at you from all kinds of angles. You got pressures coming from school, right? You got pressures coming from perhaps sports, the performing arts. You have parents who put pressure on you, coaches, teachers. You got pressures from yourself. You got pressure coming from all different angles. And for some of you, that manifests itself in anxiety, or perhaps fear, perhaps for some depression. It might manifest itself in all kinds of high-risk behaviors. As a chaplain, when I get called out, usually something tragic has happened in our community. Usually somebody has died. And they'll call a chaplain to come and just be a presence, to help in any sort of way, to just be with people who have experienced loss. And I have to tell you, far too many times in our community, I've sat with parents whose children have died because of a poor choice. It could be a drug overdose. It could just be high-risk behavior. It could be suicide. A number of things. Far too many times. And as a parent, those are the toughest things you could ever imagine doing as a parent, let alone a chaplain. Whenever my phone rings, and I look at my phone, and it says dispatch, I know somebody's died. Somebody's world has just been turned upside down. Some family, some even perhaps the community, their world has been turned upside down. Several years ago, I was at home on a warm Saturday afternoon in February. My phone rang, and I looked at the phone, it said dispatch. I answered the phone, they said, "Are you available? We have a middle school girl who took her own life, and her mother and her brother at home. And the fire department asked if you would come." And I showed up at this home, and I sat with this mother and this brother for what seemed like forever. What do you say? What do you talk about? We were waiting for the coroner. We were also waiting for the father to come home. The father was out running some errands, and several agencies were trying to locate him to get him home. After about 30 minutes, Dad comes running in the front door. 2 deputies are following him. He runs immediately upstairs and goes to his little girl's room, and he kneels down by her body, and he looks up at one of the deputies and he says, "How could this happen? How in the world could this happen?" And he immediately got up. He ran out the room, out of the room, ran down the hall to his bedroom. And from downstairs, all I heard were several deputies yelling, "No! No! No!" And I ran upstairs just as they were tackling him and taking him to the ground, preventing him from taking his own life. And I'll never forget, as I jumped into the fray, looking into this man's eyes, and I could see that a part of his soul had disappeared. I don't know how to describe it to you. A father who had just gone through what he was going through and is still going through today. So we took him downstairs and put him in the back of a patrol car. And I was allowed to sit with him for about 20 minutes in the back of that car. And he began to just calm down a little bit, extremely upset, but became rational. And I asked him about his little girl. "Tell me about your girl." And he began to describe to me what she was like. An honor student. She was in the arts. She played piano. She was a beautiful young lady. She was struggling in a class. That was the only thing he could think of. And they talked about it. He was racking his brain for how this could happen. But as he began to describe his little girl to me, I was no longer the chaplain in the back seat of that patrol car. I was a parent. For he didn't know, as he was describing his girl to me, that I had a girl the same age. And I began to think about my little girl and all the things that she was going through, and all the things that she's going through now as a junior in one of our high schools in our district, and the pressures that she faces. Trying to meet the expectations to look a certain way, to act a certain way, to get certain kinds of grades, to talk about where you're going to go to school, what kind of career you're going to have, and what your SAT scores were, and your ACT scores. All those kinds of things. Are you feeling those pressures? Do you know what I'm talking about? I see it in my family. I see it with my daughter. Sitting in the back of that car, I thought if this little girl could take her own life, any little girl could take her own life. Even my own daughter, if this is all it takes. It scared the crap out of me. So you can imagine, I couldn't wait to get home, and it's not easy talking to your daughters as a father sometimes, to get them to talk about how they're really feeling and what they're really thinking. But ever since that day, it's impacted my life to try to understand some of the things that you're going through, let alone my daughter. So I want to say one word about suicide as well. 1 out of every 10 students will attempt suicide. Let me tell you this. You can never take your own life without taking down the lives of the people who love you the most. Your parents, your siblings, your friends, and even a community. You would never in a million years think of killing anybody else. But when you kill yourself, that's what you do. You put to death, a fate worse than death, the people that love you the most. So I just want to say, no matter how severe the emotions are, most of you, suicide's not an option. But I want to say this loud and clear. It is not an option. You have to find a way to talk and to work it out. Do it. Do it. You're going to hear some stories today, because no matter, the pressures can lead to all kinds of ways where your life can end because you make a poor choice. Whether it's addictions, overdoses, drug abuse, you can live and still be dying. You can make choices that affect your life for the rest of your life and never really ever truly live. I have a brother who's 53 years old who started using drugs in high school. He's 53, 2 marriages, he's got 2 grown daughters, he's been in and out of jail, he's had the hardest time getting clean, all because he made a choice when he was your age to begin using drugs. And they just took a grip of his heart and his mind, and they've never let go of his life because of the choices he made when he was in high school. So think about that. You have a long life to live. You have plenty of time to work it all out. You're thinking about careers, you're thinking about jobs, you're thinking about schools, GPAs, SATs, LMNOPs, whatever it is you think about. But you got a long time to work it out. I want to illustrate that. James, come on up here. James is one of your water polo players. Good to see you out of the water. James, I want you to hold the end of this tape measure. How old are you, James? You're 16 years old. So let's just say James has lived this long, right here. He's 16. See that little red dot right there? Come over this way just a little bit. Okay? That's where James is living right now. Some of you all are living right here somewhere, right now. This is where you live. Now, Lord willing, you live a long life. Your longevity could be anywhere as long as 80, 90 years. I know a lady who's 112 years old, lives in Pittsburgh. My grandmother was 97. If you live a long life like you're supposed to, you're going to live all the way down to this end of the spectrum. 85, right here. You see that? That's a lot of living left that you have in your life. You can live to your 95. That's all the way down to here. But you guys are living right now, right here. Certainly, you can make some choices right here that can negatively affect your life for a long time. That's what this is all about, is making good choices. But you've got to realize that you have a long time to work out your life. Make a lot of decisions. Change your mind about things. Change your mind about careers. Whatever your scores are here, whenever you go to college, that's all right here. This is where you live, right here. So live long. Give yourself a break. Take a deep breath this morning as you're hearing these stories. And realize you got a long time to work it out. Just make good choices right here. Make the best you can. And let one another, let each other help you make good choices. Spur one another on to make good choices. Do you agree with that? Are you with me on that? Let's give James a hand. Thank you, man. Good work. So take these stories to heart. Just know that you live in a community where there's a lot of people who care a lot about you and your lives. Your lives affect us. They affect me. I don't ever want to sit in any one of your homes with any one of your parents waiting for a coroner to show up. Make good choices, please. Thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Rob Galbraith from Pleasanton, California. Currently live in Livermore. As you can see, I love cycling. It's probably one of my biggest passions. I'm training almost every single day, racing almost every weekend. Work full-time for a semiconductor company. Hopefully in the next couple of years, finishing school and moving either out of the country or staying within the country to to help people out.
My life consists of working, school, and writing. That's really about it.
So this is my buddy Mike, Marvier, call him Marv.
I would describe him in one word, it would definitely be transformed. Definitely over the past few years that I've known him, I've just seen how much he's changed as a person, how much he's matured as a person, and just the way that he decided to live his life now. It's completely transformed the way he cares about people, the way he loves people, and just really wishes the best for others.
I have a passion just for helping people, especially high schoolers. That was probably the toughest time in my life.
Hey, you guys just kind of seen a glimpse into what my life is like now. Just, a lot of cycling, working, hanging out with friends, and just spending a lot of time outside. Just enjoying life, really, and just soaking up. I guess, yeah, this is Rob signing off, guys.
We're in Monte, Vista High. I'm Rob Galbraith. I'm 23 years old. You guys can talk about So you kind of got a glimpse of what my life is like now. What I'm up here about to do is kind of give you an idea or a glimpse into what my life was like before I kind of got to where I am now. So like I said, I'm 23. I graduated from Amarillo Valley High School in 2007, so you guys kind of do the math. But like many of you, grew up with a loving mother, a loving father, had a brother and a sister. Around freshman year, things started kind of getting a little dicey for me. My parents got divorced and didn't think that was going to happen. To me, I saw it happening to some of my other friends' family and was thinking, oh, that's them. It's not going to happen to my family. My family's perfect and everything's hunky-dory. But it happened, and it blindsided me. And it really started getting me to question, where my self-worth was, my identity, what my and direction and purpose in life was. High school student, you guys struggle and think about that a lot. And with that came lies. With where your identity comes from, where you find it, and how you find it, direction and purpose. So I started turning to alcohol. Drank a lot in high school. I also struggled with self-mutilation, so cutting. I don't know if any of you struggle with that or know someone who struggles with that. But don't let that go untalked about, or let someone know about that, because that is something that's very dangerous, as I'm about to get to. So got heavily into that. So with that came a group of friends who I thought actually cared about me, but really they didn't. All they cared about was the next time they were going to get drunk, the next time they were going to get high. And they didn't know how to care for anyone but themselves. These were the kinds of friends that thought it was funny when someone was blacked out drunk or puking into a toilet or out of a car window or in the curb, And they thought it was hilarious. It was their sole purpose, or they thought it was their goal to get someone drunker, higher, or more strung out than they had ever been before. That was their goal. That's what they wanted to do. So that's the kind of people that I surrounded myself with. Not very healthy to be around. So they also didn't know how to help someone when they fell. And unfortunately, I was the guy in that group of friends that fell. One morning, I made a decision that I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to live. And I thought it would be a lot easier to be dead. That my life would be easier, my parents' lives would be easier, my brother's life would be easier, and teachers, friends, everyone else's life would be a lot easier. I was not here. So I grabbed the sharpest razor I could find and ran it as many times as I could through my forearm. And it didn't care how deep it went or how many times it went through. All I cared was that I did not want to be here. And it was a miracle, so it's a miracle that I'm standing here in front of you guys, being able to talk to you guys about this. Because I put myself in the ER with 27 stitches and 2 cut arteries in my forearm. And while I was in that ER, I had to make a choice, was to either continue down the path that I was on, which was probably eventually going to kill me at the rate I was going, or I could walk away from that and walk into a life that seemed hopeful and full of life. Because up until that point, I had no hope. I had no clue where I was going, where my hope was coming from, or any even remote hope of getting out of it. And that's where my faith really kind of came into play. With that, it's given me hope, it gave me a purpose, and it's given me a direction. And so with that, I was able to start kind of working my way out of that. And with that faith came a new group of friends that were speaking truth and really actually cared for me, genuinely cared for me with the way they talked, the way they hung out, and the things that they said, speaking truth, and just really encouraging, wanting to see me get out of where I was. And I really, they're a testament because I've been sober for around six or 7 years. So with that, they helped me through that, as well as my faith. And what I really want to challenge you guys with is think about it. Think about the friends you surround yourself with, and think about the kind of friend you are to your friends. You know, are you the guy or girl that encourages your friend to take that one last shot, or take that one last hit, or one last line? Or are you the kind of friend that encourages them to make healthy choices? Because you guys are met with choices every day, you know, either here on campus or off campus. You guys guessed it, some of them will help you and set you up for a healthy future. I mean, even Nick used that example of the tape measure. Why wouldn't you guys want to make that time frame that he's talking about, you guys are going to be able to live your life easier, healthier? Why don't you set yourself up for that now? And at the same time, you're going to make decisions that are going to hurt you. For me, I didn't see the consequences right away. And they built up, and they built up, and they built up over time. And it just fell apart right in front of my eyes. And I had nowhere to turn. So for me, it was my faith. For you guys, it may be your faith, it may be sports, art, you know, whatever that is, but it ultimately needs to be something that gives you hope, direction, a purpose, and just an identity. Ultimately an identity, and ultimately it's something that can't be taken away from you. So can I challenge you guys, think about that. I know this week is going to be all about this, so take this next week to really think about that. Let that soak in, who you're around, the decisions that you're making, because they stay with you. I walk around with scars on my forearms and probably they cover my whole body. I walk around with them every day. And I have to answer the questions, oh, why do you have so many scratches on you? I have to answer that. And also I walk around with emotional scars from times that I made bad decisions when I was drunk and high on something. So think about it, let it soak in. Thanks, guys.
Everybody's trying he can just brighten up any mood.
A lot of kids are so put off by cops to begin with, and they don't really want much to do with them. But Scott, on the other hand, Scott would come up to me. Scott liked to play jokes.
He was like my big brother. That's like the best way to describe it. He basically had my back through everything. Whatever was wrong, I'd go to him and he'd fix it.
Everyone looked up to him, admired his point of views.
He's like, kind of like the dad of everybody. Help you out with your problems, easy to talk to.
He'd always make me feel better about myself, whether it was a compliment or he would always tell me about what was going on in his life. We could just share and talk, and it was just amazing. He was such a great guy.
He was just a big protector and funny guy that everyone loved.
I used to tell my friends that we had John Candy in our family.
We always wanted to be like cops together and stuff like that.
I'm obviously pretty small. He was pretty big. And so I came up to him freshman year and said, senior year, we're going to be rally chairs together because just looking at us is funny, so it's golden. And then senior year, we started to really click, and a lot of good times senior year, for sure.
Sorry, I'm not finding bud.
I was like 12 years old and he was like 9. I got mad at him, so I threw a screwdriver right at him. And it barely missed him, which is probably a good thing. Put a massive dent in the door, and I just remember him coming back in the room like, oh my gosh, you could have killed me, that was really close. Just like most people would have been like really mad, and he was just like, well, that was really close.
I landed in Hawaii, turned my phone back on, and I had 82 text messages and 100 voicemails on my phone of everyone asking me if I was okay. And almost immediately, as soon as I saw the info, I knew right away something had happened to Scott because he was the only one who didn't call me.
That night we had like a ceremony with the people who were in Hawaii since we couldn't be here. And we like put a lei out in the ocean because that's like the Hawaiian tradition.
It was as if somebody had just sucked the life out of our school in a moment. To lose another student in that way was, I don't know, I can't explain the feeling of it because it was just awful.
I worked with him the night prior. I was to meet him over here at a McDonald's parking lot. He's late, so I'm calling his phone. I'm pretty upset. I'm yelling, dude, what's your deal? I'm going home. I'm going back to sleep. And then I get a phone call from a friend saying we need to have a talk. And right then, kind of knew something was up. So yeah, kind of went downhill from there.
I actually found it, yeah. That's probably the worst thing ever, and I can tell you from personal experience, you never want to have to do that.
Quite honestly, I think about Scott every day, and family events now are tough because when Scott's not there, the void is palpable.
You know, I really love that kid. Not just as, you know, one of the students here, but I really did value Scott as a friend.
The tragic part about this, he made one simple mistake that cost him his life.
Some of the choices you make, you gotta see how they're gonna affect not only yourself, but the others around you, because I know a lot of people have been affected.
There's always little things that remind you, and it's hard to live with. And now every day, a lot of people have to deal with, you know, his choice, his last choice.
I knew before I arrived home that Scott was gone. His brother had called me at work and said that I needed to come right home, that something very bad had happened to Scott. No more details than that, and he hung up. As I was driving home, I called him back and I said, Will, do we need to call 911? And he said, no, Mom. They're already here. They're already here waiting to talk to you. I knew then that he was gone because they don't wait to talk to you. When I arrived home, in my driveway, there was a police officer waiting to explain to me. And I remember saying to him, I already know, even though I really didn't know for sure. And the I'm so very sorry that he uttered was more telling than the actual words. I went up to Scott's room where he appeared to be sitting on the floor, his body resting in the notch between his bed and his nightstand. He appeared to be sleeping. I remember looking at him for a very long time and thinking there was a mistake. He just needed to wake up. I wasn't allowed to touch him or to hold him, and so I just sat on his bed, looking at him, willing him to wake up. And after a while, I began to tell the police officer in the room with us what a great kid he was, how he just graduated from high school 3 days earlier, what a great time he'd had at his senior all-nighter, and what a kind and compassionate person he was. And that it didn't make any sense. He was supposed to be going off to college in the fall. It was a very long period of silence. And the police officer said to me, "This is the hardest part of my job." And he stepped from the room. And when I think back on that statement and how ironic it is that for the police officer to put himself in harm's way, that was his job. But to sit and listen to a parent reflect on the short life of a child who made a poor choice that cost him his life, he was helpless. He couldn't bring him back. He couldn't protect him. And he couldn't change the decision that was made. For Scott, it was too late. His exuberance for life was gone. His friendship's over, and his family was forever changed. One poor, irrevocable, preventable choice took him up from us forever. For those who saw Scott that day in his room before the coroner came for him, it's had a profound effect on all of us, but in different ways. I was comforted just sitting and being with him, knowing it was my last time. I did not see the signs of death that had set in, making his body look bruised and battered. I only saw my youngest son, so quiet and still, his ever-present smile wiped clean from his face. For others, it has remained a haunting vision, one that should not be their last for someone that they loved so much.
Good morning. My name is Ken Rogers with my wife Pam, Scott's parents. On Monday the 15th of June, 2008, the day started as any other day. I traveled to my office in Walnut Creek and was preparing for a trip that would begin that afternoon. Mid-morning, I received a call from my wife in a voice that I'd never heard. She advised me that I needed to get home, that there was an issue with Scott. She didn't say much more. As I packed up and left the office and I was traveling through Walnut Creek, I called her again to ask her if I should just meet her at the hospital. There was no answer. I then called my older son, and there was no answer on his phone. As I proceeded home, there was no emergency vehicles going up and down Stone Valley Road, and as I arrived in front of my home, I quickly realized that this was more than an injury. As there was one fire unit in front of our home, no paramedics, and several police cars. As I got to the front, my front doorstep, I was greeted by my wife, and she broke the news to me that Scott was gone. Scott died because he made a decision to use inhalants and he moved from one type of inhalant to a different, to dust off, and that ultimately took his life. Scott had no intention of taking his life. He loved life. He lived life to the fullest. But he was very inquisitive, and he also liked to, and he also felt that it was no big deal, that he was in control of his actions. In talking with his friends, we learned that Scott's journey towards his death started much younger. When he was a freshman or sophomore in high school, he started using whippets. And he did this on various occasions with his friends, and his friends were a very close-knit group. He kept it very, very secret. There were very, very few people that knew of this altered side of my son's ego. And then, as he was in senior year, the last 6 months, they said that the group of the 6 of them went nuts. And that may have been because of knowing that their high school journey was going to end, that they were going to move in different directions, but they went nuts, and the partying really accelerated to quite an extreme. Beyond that, today, even today, his friends are still impacted by Scott's decisions because there's self-imposed guilt, because they knew what he was involved with and they didn't raise the issue because of the code of silence. And it's tragic that they still live with that today, because my son made his decisions, and based on his decisions, he's not here today. It wasn't anybody's fault except Scott's fault on the path that he got himself into, because he really didn't assess the consequences of his actions. He felt that he was in full control, but the results certainly indicate that that wasn't the case. And even today, his friends and his family still suffer the consequences of his decisions. But today isn't about my son. Today is about you. Today is about the decisions that you're going to make today, tomorrow, and well beyond. And the senior class, you have many, many decisions that you're going to be faced as you move into your careers, your college, and beyond Monte Vista High School. And please assess the consequences of your decisions before you engage. And if you do engage in something, assess as you're involved with it, because you can get lulled into a sense of security, and that security can get you into trouble. Those of you that may be in the audience that are thinking, well, that won't happen to me, that person did some dumb stuff, that happened. The only thing I would say is be careful. Be very careful, because I know my son had that same attitude, that he was better, that he could handle it. And we all know the results of his decisions. So again, this is all about you. This is about the decisions you're going to be making, because in the end, it's up to you. Thank you.
I want to take this opportunity to thank first Nick for giving us the perspective of a chaplain, of a first responder, and what it would be like for him and for others in that situation. I'd like to thank Rob for his honest perspective of his experiences and how he has weaved his way to being here in front of us today. And then I'd like to thank the Rogers for the courage that it takes for them to be here and to speak to you from the heart. A couple of things also that are important for you to know. Number one, that if there's a need for you to talk with a counselor today, if something that was said has moved you to emotions, that it would be helpful to talk to a counselor. They are here available for you Tomorrow during advisory, all of you will be debriefing today with your teachers and have an opportunity to talk things through and make sense of what was said today. And this really is a week that's been put together for us. It's going to culminate on Friday with a health fair and an opportunity to see within this, our own community where there are healthy choices that we can make. In closing, I'd like to say to you, as the teacher in your life, that you mean a great deal to us. You affect us each and every day, and we really want you to understand and not take for granted your ability to make healthy choices and the consequences that go with those choices. So thank you for being here today, and hopefully something this week will impact you. Thank you.